All right, what's good, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. I am the host, Dr. Nii, the Doc Outside the Box, and I am joined by
Dr. Renee.
my lovely co-host. Welcome to the show, guys. So in this episode, this is going to be the first trap that we talked about when we mentioned about 2 or 3 episodes ago when we talked about the 11 money traps that burnt out doctors can overcome, right? So we're going to get into that today, which is, for the most part, no savings. All right. I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when they hear this episode, but I'm telling you right now, like these are really important things, important traps that people fall into. You don't think about it. And, you as a listener may be on autopilot, and then you find out years later that why am I in this cycle? Why am I in this trap and I can't get out of it? And it's like, I wasn't listening to Dr. Nii and Dr. Renee. No, but you get into you get into this trap, or you fall into this area where you can't get out of it. And the first thing is no savings.
Right.
Which, as medical professionals, when you compare our income to other people, we have a higher income than other professions. And it's kind of sad that if we don't start savings, or if we don't start any type of savings,
Right.
We end up in situations that we don't want.
Yeah.
So let's jump and do something into 30,000 foot view first, which I like to do before we jump into the specifics. But the reasons why people save, you want to start that?
Yeah, I mean, people save for an emergency fund. Like you can, in case something happens and you need money quick.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
that's
if it's a
one
big
reason.
emergency, you need it within 24 to 48 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But then another reason might be just to splurge, right? A lot of times people are thinking about savings like, oh, I got to be so disciplined and I won't be able to get the things that I want to get. I want my red bottom shoes and whatever. And it's like, listen, you can splurge. It's your money.
Right.
But you can save to splurge so you're not going into debt for those red bottoms.
Yeah, I remember Ramit Sethi in his book. I forgot. I'll teach you to be rich or something like that.
Yeah, I'll teach you to be rich.
If I remember, I'll put it in the show notes. But I remember he was talking about it's, the funny thing is when he talks about in his book, it's not just about denying yourself what you really want to do. It's really about prioritizing what you want to do.
Right.
So if you want to go out on the weekends, then yes, you can go out on the weekends and have money for that. It's just that you can't prioritize going out on the weekends, spending money on the weekends, and then during the week you're prioritizing, excessive lunches.
Right.
Excessive,
Right.
spending, high amounts of money on whatever it may be. Choose
Exactly.
one thing. Say that you want to spend money on clothes,
Right.
or if you want to spend money on whatever it may be, but choose that one thing and then prioritize that in the savings, and then so that when it's time for that month, you can spend.
You ready to go.
Right.
But, that also brings me to upcoming expenses, which is another reason that you can save. A lot of times, and I think I mentioned it on that previous episode, it's like, listen, Christmas coming up, right? You that, right? But people wait till the last minute, like, oh, I need to go shopping for Christmas, or, some other event, that might be coming up. It's like, yeah, but you knew that was coming up. So just save for it. That way you're not, again, running into an issue where you got to put it on credit, or you're overdrafting, which is probably, even worse.
Yeah, that's a mindset change for a lot of people. That was a mindset change for me. It took me a while to recognize that it's smarter to just say, okay, what are the things that we spend on a yearly basis, one time, Christmas, car payment, that's twice a year.
Right.
And what if there was a way that we can kind of save up front for it so that it's not a shocker when it comes?
Exactly.
Yeah, I
exactly.
agree
Where
with
it's
you
not
there.
too much of a burden. But
Yeah.
then I would say the last reason probably that people save is, to decrease your vulnerability at work.
Now you got me listening.
Now I got you listening. Now you listening. You're like,
F you
what?
money. F you. F you.
F you money.
F you. F you, Eddie. Tell your job. Nah, man. So yeah, that's the whole point, is to save enough money.
Now you got a lot to say now.
Yeah, you want to save enough money so that if you want to walk away from something, you can walk away from something.
Yeah.
If you want to say no to something, you can say no to something. If someone asks you at work, hey, or if they're consistently asking you to do things that you don't want to do, everybody needs to have FU money, a little stash to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm good. like this FU money and my unemployment, we're gonna be good. We're gonna be all right.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much, right? Pretty much like that money, I look at it as, listen, you save up that money because that's the ransom you're going to pay to get your freedom from work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key thing for this is that no matter where you are in training, whether you are as a pre-med, if you are a resident, if you're a medical student, if you're an attending, like all of this stuff applies at some point.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, like, for example, if you are in a pre-med or if you are a medical student and money is really low, like, yeah, I think you should be prioritizing getting an emergency fund. And I think, like, there's times when you want to get out there and you want to have fun.
Right.
So I think that, like, besides studying, besides paying your rent and food, if you want to go out like once a month, not once a weekend, once a month or so, you can save for that and say, okay, this is the money that I'm going to be using, to go out with. This is, however much you want to put towards that. And then I still can save and put money away for, some type of unforeseen accident or just savings just in general. So.
Well, I mean, especially if you're pre-med, you actually should be saving because, applying to med school, that costs money.
So I remember you were talking to pre-meds. What's the average cost to apply?
To go through the whole process.
Yeah, what's the average cost?
It's like $3,300 to like $5,000.
Yeah, it's
and that was pre-COVID. Obviously, COVID definitely impacted that in such that people didn't have to travel anymore. But once everything opens up again and people are traveling again, yeah, I mean, but even the applications are expensive, and pre-meds don't necessarily kind of brace themselves for that by having some savings to be like, listen, this is going to be I'm getting into medical school money.
I have to say, like, is it me? Because you are closer to it than I am. I'd have to say, like, what, 2/3 of the amount of money, like the total money, is like application fees.
Oh yeah.
And then maybe the last third is travel.
Yeah.
Am I right? Or
yeah, I would think so. Okay. I would think so because I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the average person getting into medical school usually applies to at least about 16 schools, which means people are applying to like 20, 30, 40 schools at a time, and you're paying out of pocket for that. There's not like a scholarship for paying for all of those schools. You might get like a waiver or something if you qualify, but for the most part, you're paying for all of that out of pocket. You should be saving.
The process of applying to med schools too, the rent is too damn high. That's what I think.
You need to cut it.
Yeah, you need to cut it. That's what I'm thinking. It's too expensive. But as we see, like with COVID and what this pandemic has shown us is that, like, there's a lot of things that are just not necessary, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, like the clinical skills examination.
Oh, right.
Like, they got rid of that, and it was just like, why are we spending all this money that you're just adding to a medical student's debt, right? So they got rid of that, but that's another story.
We'll talk about that on another day.
We're not here to talk about that.
We don't need that test.
We're not here to talk about that. So listen, let's since we started 30,000 foot view, right? We talked about the reasons why people save: emergency fund, splurging, right? If you want to go out to a certain event, clothes, as well as like thinking about upcoming expenses, which is what we do, right? If we know we have an insurance payment coming up for our car, or Christmas time, or whatever it may be, a vacation.
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be. Like, we know that we are saving and we're putting it into different buckets so that it's ready for that. And then that was huge for us. The last thing, which was having FU money.
Yes.
Right? So that we can say no, because we know, like, let's be honest, like, hospitals be tripping sometimes and they'll ask you to do certain things. And I think we're at a point now where we're just like, you know what? Like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yep.
And you can always find a job and we can always walk away.
Right.
And I think sometimes people listening to the show, they're like, yeah, can you really? And I'm like, yeah, you can actually.
Yeah. I mean, imagine going into even a job interview and knowing that, you know what, if I don't get this particular job, like, I'm still going to eat. Yeah. I'm still going to be fine. Like, I'm not going to be underwater, and really just sitting down, in a place of leverage.
Yeah, well, even just not even if you're not even thinking about it during the interview, when you're in your job and just knowing, okay, you know what, I'm a year deep, 2 years deep. If the, if the duties change.
What you mean? They ask you to be on call Q2?
Right. Something like that occurs. You could be like, yeah, you know what? I'm out. All right, so let's jump into emergency savings, right? Because I think, anyway, whether we talk about saving for splurging or saving for upcoming expenses, like, starting out with an emergency fund, basically, once you're able to do an emergency fund, you could just rinse, wash, and repeat
Right,
with
for
these
everything
other
else.
things for everything else,
Yeah.
right? So let's jump into what an emergency fund is. So for everyone who is listening, an emergency fund is basically a bank account, right? It's a bank account where you have money that is set aside for large, unexpected expenses. All right, we're not talking about you get the delivery man to your house and you don't have enough for a tip. Right?
Yeah, that ain't no
Like,
emergency.
we're not talking about you overdrafted and you need to transfer money from one account to another account.
Right.
We are talking about expenses. All right.
Right.
All right, everyone.
Yeah, like real emergencies.
Right. So we're talking about like unforeseen expenses, right? So I'm a surgeon, I'm morbid. I'm talking about like one day, like you got right lower quadrant pain. They tell you it's appendicitis
And you ain't got no insurance.
and you ain't got no insurance. Well, hopefully you got insurance, but there's going to be a copayment. Trust me. Right? So that is a large unexpected payment, right? And actually, I was doing some research. 2/3 of bankruptcies actually cite medical emergencies
Yes.
as the thing that started the downward spiral.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I'm not tripping, y'all. I'm not tripping. And the other thing, low key, is I don't think I had medical insurance in med school.
I think I started out and then I let it lapse.
Yeah, the statute of limitations are they ain't gonna be able to touch me, but I don't think I had health insurance, right? But like when you're young, right? You are young. You're in your 20s or 30s. Like that is the time when you are going to get appendicitis, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I did not have any insurance whatsoever, right? So y'all, this is like the early 2000s, right? 2002, 2003, 2004.
Right.
Like there's no Affordable Care Act where there's a limit.
Right.
Right? There's no Affordable Care Act where there's a limit on how much you can be
Right.
charged, right?
Yeah.
And that was the big issue. A lot of people sometimes poo-poo the Affordable Care Act, but that was one of the big strong points was, once this came out, like there was a maximum that you could expect to pay.
Right.
But even if you ain't got up to that maximum, it's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
'Cause,
problem.
Yeah, you still gonna have to save that money.
Right. So other issues that could be used in an emergency fund are, let's say you own a home, you have a condo or you own a house and the water heater busts.
So listen, the water heater will go out. Somebody listening to this podcast episode right now, your water heater busted. Go downstairs.
Make sure you put us on speaker so you can continue to listen to the show. Sorry about that if it did happen, all right? But also your car breaks, right?
Yep.
Like the engine needs to be replaced, which happened to us, right? The car that we had was only about 6 years old, and then all of a sudden the engine just blew out. But yeah, major car fix, not like a tire change, not like maintenance. I'm talking about like something major occurs and you need
Right.
to fork over some money for that.
Yep.
And then, not last but not least, but unemployment,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
For the unforeseen time that you may have to walk away from something, or you lose your job because of downsizing or what have you.
Or COVID.
We've seen hospitals close and residencies just straight up close.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And some residents may not be able to get a chance to go to another residency program. So you're kind of,
Yeah, there's
asked
that
out,
MCP
basically.
Heineman.
Yeah, you're asked out, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that it's important first to delineate what exactly is an emergency, right? And then that fund, that emergency fund, is going to be in a bank account where this money is used for these specific reasons.
Right.
So you want
Right.
to jump in on that?
No, I mean, I think you pretty much hit the nail right on the head. It's just you have to know that emergencies will happen. You will not get through this life without having an emergency.
Yes.
So in as much as we say, well, it's unforeseen, you didn't see it coming, honey, it is always coming. I'm serious. Go downstairs and check. Your water
Why are you
heater
scaring these
is
people?
busted. Watch. Listen, if you listening to this and your water heater busted,
Text us.
even like 2 days after you listen to it, text us. Text
us.
us. But
I can't remember the number. It's in the show, it's in the show notes,
it's
though.
in
Text
the show
us.
notes.
It comes right to our phone. Text us.
So that's the thing that, I think people don't really want to admit is that, yeah, you are going to have an emergency. Just because you don't see it right in front of you doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. And it always happens. So why not just save for it?
And piggybacking on that, the question is, well, why don't I just use my credit cards? It's like, aha, that's the point. That is the point, right? The point is not to create any more debt, right? Not to create debt in order to handle an emergency.
Well, you paying for an emergency because you don't have the money, but you paying for the emergency with money you actually don't have.
Right. And so, yeah, that's a very interesting way of looking at it. I agree with you there. And the whole point is that you're creating this buffer, right? You're creating this buffer so that if any of these things occur, you can use this reserve as opposed to getting or using your credit card, right?
Getting interest.
Or going and using a high interest loan, right? Like a payday loan or, whatever it may be. So that's the most important thing to understand. And I think that was a big thing for us, right? Before we decided that we were going to pay off all of our student loan debt, we made a plan that we were going to try our best to save up. I think we made a plan for at least 3 months, right? Of expenses.
The way that we started it was we said we're going to save at least $2,000 first. And then we went on and said, okay, we're going to save for like 3 months worth of expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember even at that point, that was tough. Like, and everybody, we're saying this, or at least I'm speaking from a point of like humble. Like, I'm being humble. Like, this was like, I graduated medical school with no savings. I graduated residency with no savings, right? Like, it's embarrassing, but it's the truth, right? Like, I had no savings in residency.
Yeah.
And hint, guys, I graduated fellowship with no savings. I had nothing saved up. I did not know how to save. I knew how to manage my money, but I really didn't know how to save.
You knew how to pay your bills.
I knew how to pay my bills. I knew how to eat, right? A lot of Popeye's chicken, Heineken, and Pepsi, right? That was all that was in my fridge, right? Heineken, Popeye's chicken, and Pepsi is the truth, right? Right? We be honest, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so this whole concept of having this financial buffer is something that we recently came up on, right? Over the last like 7-8 years.
Yeah.
So for us, we had a total of $662,000
worth of student loan debt.
Right. Like, but the key thing for that is the number one thing we said before we started all of this is we won't create any more debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the number one way to not create any more debt was to have cash reserves.
Right.
So that when a situation came up, we can pay with cash first.
Right.
And then
you build that back up again.
Right.
Yeah. So I did actually graduate with a little bit of savings from residency.
Well, you're wiser than me. So. You are. How much savings did you have?
I don't remember exactly. I definitely could afford to sit out like 3 months after I graduated.
Yeah.
But then by then I found out that I got into fellowship, the health policy fellowship in Atlanta, and then I moved there. So
brother was living on credit cards.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was paying.
But you know me, I hadn't had a credit card in a long time.
Yeah. So when I was in Miami and I became an accidental landlord and I was renting out my property in Atlanta, there were a couple of months where the renters were late, and I had to use my credit card to pay for the mortgage.
You had to use your debt to pay for the debt.
Right. Or whatever savings I had or whatever I got paid, I used that to pay the rent. And then I had to use the credit card for my living expenses in Miami.
Right.
I was bad. It was
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah. It was a struggle. So it was pretty much a struggle. So let's go into how much should we save or how much you should save. Okay. And I think that we set an example of $2,000. And I just want everybody to know when we're saying we want to save $2,000, we're attendings at this point.
Yeah. And that's an arbitrary number too, right? Like,
well, I think at that point we were listening to Dave Ramsey. And then we just said, where he says, try to save up $1,000, where we're like, well, we're two physicians. We can try to save up $1,000 each.
Yeah.
And then go from there. But I think if you are a resident, if you're in med school or even a pre-med, like that is a lot of money to start off with.
Yeah.
So I think trying to set a goal of like $400 to $500, I think that's a good starting point. And the reason I say that is research shows that most families or most individuals don't have enough past $400 for an emergency. Right. So if something were to happen, they don't have enough savings past $400. So if something were to happen past that point, they're not protected, right?
They're not protected, yeah.
So that's why I say, if you can, try to start with $500.
Yeah.
And go from there.
And slowly, right? Like, don't feel like, oh, I got this paycheck. for $501, I got to save $500 of it. Like, no, that's not what we're saving. We're saying, take like $20 and put it away. And then, your next paycheck, put maybe another $20. Start slowly, but have that goal of $300, $500, dollars to save.
And I think looking back, I think that what Renee is saying of starting slowly, like you're building a habit, right? We're going to talk about atomic habits. But
Yeah.
like you're building a habit of constantly, anytime you get paid or you find some form of income in some form of way, if someone gives you money, you're always knowing that you're taking a piece of that and you're stashing that away.
Right.
And if you do that over several months, you'll eventually get to your goal. If you're starting at $500 versus $1,000, wherever you're at, you're getting to a point where you're building that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I really like that because the Atomic Habits talks about like, well, what kind of person are you trying to become?
Yeah.
Right. And so in this case, I would say that you're trying to be a good steward, of your money, of your resource. And so if you are the type of person who wants to be a good steward of your money, then one of the things that you should be doing or adopting as a habit is saving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think overall, if someone were to go down that vein, the next question would be, well, how much should I really save once I get past 500? So I think in general, we oftentimes give people the advice of, I would say 3 to 6 months of expenses, living expenses. So we're talking about 3 to 6 months of what your rent is going to be.
Yeah, or
what
mortgage.
What food is going to be on average, your mortgage, utilities, things to keep the lights on, as
and your belly full.
Right, as Tiffany Aliche says, like the ramen, things to supply like that ramen diet, right? Things to supply.
Ain't nothing wrong with ramen.
Right, things to supply that ramen diet. So that the basics that you need.
Yeah.
But what we did, we created a little bit more of an emergency fund that also included the minimum payments on our loans. Remember that?
Yeah.
You want to tell them why we did that?
Well, I mean, we did that because we didn't know, like, if something happened for us, having that big student loan payment was something that we just did not want to. We didn't want to fall victim to.
Yeah, because we already learned a lesson. Like, so I don't know about. I think pretty much we did. I know for me, through residency and fellowship, I did not make many payments.
Yeah, I didn't make many payments.
So my student loans went from,
which explains why I had some savings.
Right. So my student loans went from $240,000 to $320. Right.
Same
So
here.
the interest rate just took crazy.
Yeah.
Went crazy on the amount that we had.
Yep.
So for me, I just always had it in my mind, like, if I don't pay my student loans, like, it's just going to increase in value. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to dig myself deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're digging this hole, and then as soon as you dig it, like, the dirt is just kind of coming back in.
Yeah.
And then you're realizing that you're going up. Like, you're not digging down, you're going
Right.
up. That's how I felt at the end
I'm
of
shocked.
fellowship.
Like, you're a trauma doc. I would have expected for you to say something like you're giving blood, but they're bleeding
I'm
out.
trying not to be morbid, though. I'm trying not to be too morbid. Like, I got to get that out of my life and stuff. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, yeah, I would have said that. But
Okay.
I'm not trying to be all like, I deal in death all the time and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So, or
Cool.
like life and death situations. So I ain't trying to go down that path anymore. So, So yeah, I think that, I think that that's key for us. It's just a little hint that we decided to put our minimums as part of our emergency fund.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to do that. Right? You don't have to do that. So I think the key thing is just 3 to 6 months of just emergency, expenses that you'll need to get by.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Now the next question is where do you put your emergency fund? I tell everybody the number one thing is don't put your emergency fund where your daily checking account is,
Right.
or if you have a savings account that you put your
Don't
money
go swiping away your emergency fund.
No, don't put it there.
Okay.
I agree.
Please.
Yeah, don't. I would put it in a high yield online bank account.
Yeah,
Online. The key is online.
Right.
That is separate from everything else. You can get to it, obviously
Yeah.
by, transferring money, but this is something that's going to take 24 to 48 hours because you want to make sure that it's just, difficult enough that you can't get your money immediately, but you don't want it so that it's going to take like 5 days. 5
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
By then it's like the emergency is already handled and stuff.
Right.
You already asked your mama to give you money and stuff at that point, right?
Mama,
Right?
you got $5 I could borrow.
Right. So I would say definitely, you sound like Chris Tucker there. I would definitely say have it in an account where it is online, you can't get to it easily. And I think if you put it in the account that's in your bank account, your normal daily bank account, you're just going to use it for like overdraft fees,
Yeah.
or you're just going to transfer money in and out. It's
Exactly.
just,
You're
it's not
going
going to
to
work.
swipe away your emergency fund, and you definitely don't want to do that. And the other thing is, if it's in an online account, like that is such a non-automatic thing to be like, oh, I'm just going to transfer this money. It forces you to think about what you're doing and make a decision. Like, am I really going to do this? Am I really about to do this? And if the answer is yes, and I don't really need to, but I'm going to, then you got a problem.
So can I tell you a little something? I don't think I ever told you this story, but
Oh boy.
like several years ago, I started an account on Betterment. And this is when I was trying to learn how to invest on my own. It was also the same time when Betterment was starting and they were trying to help people invest. You know, they would not help. There's no such thing as helping people, but they were trying to get as many people onto their platform as possible. So I said, okay, they had an option to create an emergency fund.
Okay.
So rather than put it
In an investment account?
yes, but they did. But I decided to say I'm going to use this as an emergency fund, but I'm going to invest it in the stock market, right? So I'm going to use one of their portfolios that's for stock market as opposed to putting it in like a money market fund, right? Which is where the money should have went.
Right.
So the money was growing. I was like, oh man, this emergency fund is dope, right? And then Brexit came.
Oh, Jesus.
And this is me still learning at this point, guys. I'm still learning about investing. I'm dipping my toe in and stuff. And then everything just starts dropping. And I'm like, whoa. Like, this is my emergency savings. Like, it can't be dropping like this because I need it.
Our emergency savings. Why are you telling me this now? Ooh, I can't wait till this podcast episode
I know,
over
right?
because
It's
we
gonna be
got
awkward.
a lot to talk about.
Well, long story short, it rebounded a little bit, but I ended up moving the money out. So I lost money, right? We lost money.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I lost money. We lost money.
Hey, boss, we sick? We sick? No, you sick, right? Yeah, so we ended up losing money, and I learned my lesson then that if I need the emergency fund should never be anything that
Is risky.
is risky.
Yeah.
And I need to get it. I need to get it within 48 hours.
Absolutely.
So
you're not going to go to Vegas and be like, bet on black, my entire emergency fund. That would be not a good idea.
Yeah, because I think and the reason I bring it up is I think a lot of people who are listening to the show, particularly the younger ones, are like, well, I want to make sure that I make some money on my interest fund, on my emergency fund. It's like, no. You don't need to.
Yeah.
You don't need to, and you do not need to overthink this, guys.
Yeah.
You do not need to overthink this. This is very simple. Just put it in an online bank account. And I'll be honest with you, online savings account, like the interest rate right now is horrible. It's like, what, 0.5% right now?
Yeah.
It's not good at all. And that's fine.
Right.
Because you don't want much volatility. You don't want any changes. It's great if it could be 1%, 2%, 3%, or what have you, but that's not coming.
Yeah. In other words, don't go to from one extreme to the next and be like, oh, well, I want to save my money. I want to be good with finances, and then start doing stuff that is just essentially reckless, right?
Yeah.
So have an emergency fund, but don't be so well, I also want to invest to the point where you do like somebody I know sitting to my right.
Hey, the statute of limitations has already.
Who goes and decides that they're going to invest their emergency
the statute
fund.
of limitations has already passed.
Dude,
do we need to be
that?
do we need to be handling this on the show publicly?
Yeah.
Nah, we don't.
Yeah,
let's move on.
Information.
Let's move on. So how do I build an emergency fund? So how do you build an emergency fund, Dr. Renee?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of different ways you can build an emergency fund. The first thing is just good old-fashioned, savings, right? So taking a percentage of whatever you make and putting it towards that savings account. So a lot of times you'll see people say, well, take 20% of your income, of your paycheck, and put that towards whatever banking account that you're going to put it in. It doesn't have to be 20%, it could be whatever. But again, you're building that muscle, building that muscle of saving. So you can start with 20, you can start with 10, just save something every single paycheck.
And I think most people's employers, they have an ability to do a direct deposit into a bank account or into several bank accounts. So don't sleep on that, guys. If you get a paycheck and there's an ability to do a direct deposit,
do it
into multiple accounts.
Yeah.
That's one way where you can automatically do it and you don't have to think about it.
Right.
So
yeah.
The other one is using tech. Right. So there's the app called Acorns. I think they still do this, but there's other apps out there where, let's say, for example, you have $1 and you go to the store and you spend 44 cents or 50 cents. Well, these apps will take the other 50 cents.
I see how you first you were at 44 cents. And then I saw you doing the mental math. I saw
my wife knows me, yo.
I saw you doing that math because I was like,
so what's $1 minus 44?
Exactly. You carried one.
How much I have left?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it 56 cents? I don't know. Is it 66 cents? I don't know.
I saw you.
That's the reason why I went into medicine, y'all. Don't laugh at me.
Wait, we deal with numbers too.
I need your support, not your laughter.
That's why you ain't going to peds.
Yeah. Or radiation oncology.
Or radiation.
Or radiology.
Any calculatory type of calculatory.
But y'all, man, can you keep... Hey.
Anyway, explain what happens with Acorn.
With the apps, so if you spend 50 cents, the other 50 cents, that app will invest it where you want it to go.
Okay,
right?
It'll keep the change, basically.
Right, it'll keep the change. Remember that when Bank of America tried that?
Yeah, keep the change.
And then they also raised their overdraft fees. It's like, come on, man, Bank of America.
Keep the change so we can keep
Bank of America, man.
We can keep the overdraft.
We don't rock with Bank of America. They're not sponsoring the show.
No, and I still don't rock with them, even if, anyway.
You're a liar. If they sponsored the show.
I probably would take it. You know I would.
I wouldn't. See, look at that.
Yes, you would.
Everybody knows Dr. Renee's scruples right there. But y'all get the point, basically, right? You want if you can use an app that can automatically either invest the money or put the money away for you, that's another great thing to use. So, and actually that brings us up to something I want to talk about, which is when you're making extra money. Let's talk about how to make extra money and how you can use that to build your emergency savings.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes what happens is you make a little bit of extra money and then you automatically have spent that money in your head, even though that was money that you weren't even expecting.
Yeah, that's me.
Right? You're like, oh my God, I got this money, I want to spend it.
Rims.
Right, exactly.
CD
but
player.
There's ways to actually save with money that is not tied to your paycheck, not tied to your income. So that way you save it and you're not missing out at all. So we just partnered up, actually makes me think of, we just partnered up with INCROWD.
Yes.
So INCROWD essentially is a service where medical residents, physicians can make money by taking surveys.
Getting that free money. For a little bit of your time, you can do a quick survey and they can understand, a little bit about the, what healthcare workers, what they think. So,
yeah. So what I like about that is, again, this is money that is not tied to your income. And you're able to just take a survey and make some money. So, and also what I like about it is that if you guys do it, then you can help the show as well. Right?
Hey guys, you get a little something, we get a little something, you know what I'm saying? Come on, this is how it works, guys.
Yeah, so you literally get money from INCROWD by just sharing your medical expertise. And what I like about this is that you can be a resident and do this also.
Yes.
You don't have to be an attending. You don't have to be a board certified X, Y, and Z. So I do like that about it. The other thing, again, when I mentioned, helping the show, is that we can actually put out surveys. You and me can put out surveys.
Which we will.
Yeah, to you, the audience, to see what you like about Docs Outside the Box, what you would prefer to hear, what you don't want to hear, those kinds of things. And as long as you complete that survey and then you sign up for INCROWD for later surveys to share your medical expertise, then that actually does help the show to grow. So,
and why wouldn't y'all do that, right? It's literally just a little bit of your time. Mm-hmm. You answer some questions, particularly if you do a survey that's specifically for Docs Outside the Box. And then if you decide to submit it and you do some other surveys, you get something, the show grows.
Yep.
It's a win-win situation. And it's not even just related to us, right? Like you can just do surveys just to lend your medical expertise so that
Exactly,
you're
and get
helping
paid.
you're helping industry grow. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, listen, so if you could get paid, right, in residency to essentially like give your medical expertise, isn't that like you getting paid to take like a standardized test? What do you think?
wait, what? Say that again?
Yeah, like so you're doing this survey, right? It's like these multiple choice, like, okay, well, what do you think
Yeah,
about
like with
this?
no pressure though. Like
Right, but that's what I'm saying. You're getting paid for it. It's like getting paid to take a
no,
standardized
it's not.
test. You're
It's
in
I would
service.
that's not the example I would use. No, it's not getting paid to take a standardized
No,
test.
I went too far.
You went too far on that. All right, because when you basically it's like whenever you do a survey, you feel like you're taking a standardized test.
No, but that's even better, right? Because then I get to answer whatever I want. I don't even have to study for this.
See what happens when you let someone become a permanent co-host, guys. Like people just you doing
I
too
done
much.
went too far?
You're doing too much.
You're doing too much.
What did they say? You putting the 2 on a 10 or something like that?
You put a little too much 2 on a 10.
Like, it's too much, man. And also, listen, guys, it's not just money that you get from doing this survey. You could also, when you get a tax return, right? Tax
Yeah,
refund
yeah.
for you, the particularly the residents. The residents, most residents should be getting a tax refund,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get this once a year. And when you get this, don't spend all of that money,
Right.
Right? Use that money for various things, including
Putting
building,
some towards savings.
putting something towards savings,
Yeah.
right? Maybe that vacation that you want to have. Obviously, you want the first thing is making sure that your emergency fund is bolstered. And then next from there is if there's something upcoming that you see is coming up, insurance, or you got some type of vacation coming up or whatever it may be.
Right.
Put some of that money in there before you go ahead and spend all of that money.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So, listen, I think the other key thing that we want to talk about also is when we started in the beginning, we said, there's multiple reasons why people want to save, right? And then we just used the example of an emergency fund. So the way how we did it is once we built our emergency fund, right? Once we got our emergency fund up to what we thought was good for us, then we kept saving actually, and that's when we started saving in the other methods that we mentioned, right? So we had like at one point we had like 9 bank accounts. One of the bank accounts was for a car fund, right? So at the time we were leasing a car, and what we would do is the payment that we were paying for the lease, we would also take
An equivalent amount.
equivalent amount and save that in a bank account. And over the next 3 years, we had all the payments that we would pay to the car company. We also had that in a savings account so that we can use that as a down payment to buy our next used car, which is what we did.
Yeah.
We used it to buy our next used car. So another account that we created was like it's an account that we use to purchase homes, right? To purchase rental properties,
Right.
so that we have enough to get rental properties, at
Yeah,
least for the down
down
payment,
payment,
right?
right.
There's another account that we used for insurance, right? So we calculated what our car insurance payments would be. We divided it by 6, and then we always put money into it on a monthly basis so that when that envelope comes in the mail or it says, hey, it's time for your
Geico want their money.
6 months, they're not sponsoring the show, right? If they want their money, or when they want their money, we have the money that's set aside
Right.
for them. So it doesn't affect our monthly, at that time, that month, and we're not expecting it, doesn't affect what's coming
Right.
in.
Right.
We already have it saved in that account. So we have multiple savings accounts that we still do. These are things that were very basic and elementary to us when we first started trying to pay off our debt.
Yep.
But now we're on auto mode. It happens on a monthly basis.
Yeah, just like our Christmas fund, we around September, October, we start saving for Christmas because Christmas comes every single year. So why not just save for it instead of, basically scrambling at the end to be like, oh, I don't have enough money for this. I don't have enough money for that. Plus, you're more likely to stay in your budget if you're like, no, this is what I saved and this is the account that I'm going to use. Rather than going over a budget that maybe you had in your head. Now you have something actually concrete. You have a concrete number that's in that savings account that you say, well, I can't go over that. So, yeah.
I get it. So, all right, everyone, what do y'all think about this? Let us know. Send us a text at 1-833-230-2860. Once again, that's 833-230-2860. 2860. If you can't write all the numbers down, don't worry. It's in the show notes. We read each and every message that everybody sends to us. And yeah, that's basically savings, in a wrap,
Yeah.
So if you guys have any questions, feel free to shout out to us by text, or you can reach us on email or Instagram. All of that stuff is going to be in the show notes. We're going to be, in the next couple of weeks, we'll come up with our next money trap that people talk about, or that burnt out doctors suffer. So listen, we're going to catch you guys on the next episode. Dr. Renee, is there anything you want to leave us with?
No, I just want to let you know that you're going to be in big trouble with that betterment story that you told.
Yo, real quick, I want to shout out my nephew.
Don't delay.
I want to shout out my nephew, Raheem. He just got into several law schools. I'm really proud of him. So he did something that is very, very atypical, I think,
unconventional
for a young person, which is he graduated from college. He had a job. He kind of felt like it was a dead end job, and he actually saved up at least 6 months of an emergency fund. And then he stopped and quit his job. And over the next 3 to 6 months, he was studying his butt off for the LSAT.
Yeah.
And he studied for the LSAT, and he applied and took the LSAT and applied to all these different schools. And now all of these schools are accepting him, and he's getting like scholarships. So I'm super excited for him. I don't know if he's going to listen to the show. But just want to let y'all know, sometimes I'm telling you, that FU money that you get from that emergency fund can help launch your career in a different direction. So, as someone who's in his early 20s, he's definitely inspiring me. And I just want to say shout out to you, Raheem. Nice job. Nice job. All right, y'all. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Hey.
Peace.